5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
You're listening to Tabletop and Beyond with your host, Justin.
But before we get started, how was your Geek Week?
And co-hosts Dan and Jason.
You have to be willing to let the dice help you tell the story.
Okay, look, this year I'm going to stop mispronouncing words. Join us as we cover board games to war games and beyond.
And welcome back to Tabletop and Beyond. I am your host, Justin. Jason, you're my co-pilot today.
Yes, sir.
We have an exciting episode. Did you realize that this is episode 90?
That's awesome. 90 episodes of ranting and raving and rambling and wasting everyone's time.
Now, that doesn't include the other segments that we do. We've got our Winning Warcry
true.
segment and our Age of Sigmar Talking Warhammer content. So we have done technically over 100 recordings, but of our kind of Tabletop and Beyond purist, this is episode 90. So 10 more episodes and we hit 100.
Yeah, should be good. I mean, it's cool to think that we've produced over 100 episodes of some form of content, but to hit just 100 episodes on this general main channel of ours is pretty cool.
And here's to 100 more, my friend.
Yes, sir. Yay. Cheers. Huzzah.
Huzzah! Well, we've got a good episode for you guys today. We are going to be talking about the best Halloween games that you can play with your friends and maybe even your family if they're not too scared.
Mm-hmm.
But before we do that, Jason, let's get into our Geek Week. Why don't you kick us off?
All right, man. Scorn. It's finally here. I have played it. I probably have only about 6 hours into it now, but it's exactly what I thought it would be. Right? It's a slow puzzle game with some combat. Okay. But it's set in a world that is themed very much like an H.R. Geiger nightmare. So it's very much, biopunk is a way I've seen it described. I like to say like a body horror. Mm-hmm. You're solving puzzles and progressing through the game at the expense of your biology. We'll say it that way. But
interesting.
It is a very slow game, so if you are the type of person that wants to run and gun shoot through a nightmarish hell, this is not Doom in any way. This is one of those games that has no context. It has no tutorial. It's just you start and you tear yourself out of the ground and begin to progress through this nightmarish landscape. And figuring the game out as you go. So really, like if you ever played like Myst, mm-hmm. or Phantasmagoria, or any of those kind of like adventure games where it really has a lot of like a mystery and puzzles that have to be solved for progression, and the puzzles get increasingly difficult as you play. That's what this is. Now there is a slight amount of combat, and it's starting to ramp up. I'm not sure if it's going to get intense or if it's really just going to be more of like a survival horror feel.
Where every now and then something comes after you.
Yeah. I would say, initially it was, like maybe I was probably about 2 hours into the game before I met my first thing that attacked me.
Did it freak you out?
No, because you were already in an area where you saw all of these things and you were kind of waiting for one of them to kind of, slap off the wall and attack you. And so when it happened, you're like, okay, all right, let's see how this is going to work. But I will say this, it's not a scary game.
Okay.
It's not a scary game. It's
just a freaky nightmare game.
Yeah, it's maybe like, for some people it might be queasy.
Okay. Because
of the biology aspect of it, but it's not scary in any way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so that's my first one, Scorn.
Nice.
It's definitely worth looking. Now, I'll say this. Its graphics on the Xbox are, I think, good, but not the best that we've seen today. I think Alien Fireteam puts this to shame.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, this is one of those where like if you run up close to the wall, like you can see like the anti-aliasing that's happening.
Oh.
And it's like I kind of was like, aren't we past this? Like with
Yeah.
with kind of current game engines, but if you get too close to some items, you can see that they're kind of low res. But it has a huge sense of scale. So like if you look off into the distance, they've done a really good job with scale and theme. So like the color palette that they used and the artwork is very consistent, and it maintains a good like feel to it. But the graphics are okay on the Xbox. Just something to keep in mind. But
Interesting.
yeah. Second thing I played was Citizen Sleeper, which is another game on the Games Pass. This is an amazing game. I am going to be praising this game for a long time. It's an indie game by a one-man publishing company. Name of the company's Jump Over the Age. They've made a few games. Published by Fellow Traveler. It is released this year. It is a single player kind of role playing adventure game.
Okay.
Set in a really cool theme. So you wake up, you're in a robot body, but you're a mind that has been downloaded from a real individual.
Oh, interesting.
So the way it works is that this is the future, kind of a cyberpunk feel, but out in space, where you've signed away your life, and the way it works, you signed away your life to this corporation. They downloaded your mind and installed you into a body called a sleeper robot, and then you have since felt oppressed by this corporation and tried to escape. So you escaped and landed on this kind of derelict space station that used to be owned and run by the corporation, but has since the corporation that did run it has since gone bankrupt. And many decades later, the natural people who stayed on the station evolved their own kind of society and their own kind of government, kind of, I don't really know yet, but kind of a government setup. And you're living inside it, trying to survive. Meanwhile, while the corporation is trying to hunt you down to reclaim their body, their robot body. But it is a very unique gameplay. It is, you don't actually walk around. It's more of like a map style game where you visit. Today I'm going to visit a certain area of the space station, and I'm going to do stuff there. So then you just kind of scroll around the space station map.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
To do things, and every day you roll dice. You roll 6 dice at the beginning of the day, and then you can apply those dice to certain tasks on the station, depending on the value of the die and your own skills that you've leveled up for your own attributes. You'll have a greater success. Now that's the mechanics of it. What makes this game shine is the atmosphere. The music is amazing. I found myself listening to the soundtrack throughout my day. It's very like eclectic, and what you would think in like a space station out in the middle of nowhere where people are trying to survive on. But the writing from this individual is just, it is so good. It just pulls you in. You care about the relationships you're building with the people. It's like a choose your own adventure. Every time you do a task, you can change the outcome of your relationship with an individual. Some of those relationships meet hard, really bad endings. Of them can make progressive endings. It's amazing writing. There's an enormous amount of reading. It's a storytelling adventure game.
Okay, all right.
But it is just you can tell this person has a degree in literature and loves games. I highly recommend it if you like adventure games. But you want a break from kind of running around and clicking and shooting things. You just want to maybe dive into a book, but aren't really interested in getting into a book. This is a great futuristic sci-fi setting there. Love it. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure game. Anyways, that's cool. I just ranted for a little bit, but I love it. I highly recommend everyone to give it a try and stick with it, because it's another one of those where he does a really good job giving you a tutorial, but he doesn't give it to you all at once. So when you first start playing the game, you're like, what am I doing? What's going on? And it gives you just a little bit of help to continue to progress to the next part. It's probably not until you're about maybe about 30, 45 minutes into the game that you really get a sense of what you're supposed to do in the game. So stick with it if you're going to try it out.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, that sounds cool. Sometimes the choose your own adventures are a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. And this one is, I love sci-fi stuff, and this is very much a cyberpunk-ish environment, which cyberpunk seems to be a theme for us today.
Yeah, and video games, because my Geek Week, while my wife was out of town, I did a lot of playing of Cyberpunk 2077.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably about 50% done with the game at this point. And I can tell based on the tasks that are on the map. Not necessarily like done with the story, just like... so if anybody here played The Witcher... they were kind of criticized. They had a huge map and like all these little question mark waypoints that you could go to and resolve a little thing. I loved it in The Witcher because those little things tied to a regional story that was going on. Like, for example, there was this one village that you had to go check out, and you find out that this guy, this lord, came in and ended up on the wedding day, killed this lady's groom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And dumped her down a well, type of thing. And she's this like moon wraith that like you have to take care of, like she's a monster, right?
Yeah.
Well, later on, you find out that same guy that had that lord that had come and killed these people. He was out on a hunting trip and had a encounter with one of his fellow buddies. Okay, and the groom saw him and swore he wouldn't tell anybody, but went back. But then the Lord came back and killed him to keep him silent. And so like all these little tiny side quests were like tying into the story, and you're like, oh my gosh, and you're like piecing this together. And you're like, holy cow, and it just really made the world feel rich and connected. Like alive and connected, and the lore was just super solid. And that was for The Witcher, which was really great. Cyberpunk 2077 just does not have that.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of little stuff to do in the world.
Yes, and it has become already super repetitive.
So there are a lot of games that, like Red Dead Redemption, one of my favorite series. Well, I don't know if I would say it's my favorite, but it's a series that I really enjoyed. But I spent probably 100-some hours playing the first game, but only progressed like 20% through the story, doing random crap off onto the side that had nothing to do with progressing the story, but still having a fun time playing the game. So in this situation, are you still having fun playing it?
Oh,
I think that answers the question.
Yeah. Red Dead Redemption, I think, is another great example to bring up. I loved hunting in Red Dead Redemption 2, especially.
Yeah, totally.
Like I'd be out there like stalking my prey and like tracking and all this stuff. And I mean, it just had so much fun doing it. And it was like, what main quest? Who cares?
Exactly.
I'm like out here just having
That's
fun.
right. I'm hunting coyotes.
This one, you're just running around the city. You get these police alerts and it's like, oh, there's an assault in progress. One of like 1,000 that are like on the map. And they don't mean anything. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, there's some flavor text that you get like when you like, they have these what are called shards, which are like little data chips that you can like kind of read messages and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah. And
you're like, okay, yeah, I understand why they committed this assault, but who cares? Like, it doesn't tie into anything. It's just a thing to do, And I really don't like games like this because I am a completionist at heart with games like this, and I feel like I haven't done the game justice if I don't do everything that's on the map, type of thing.
Yep.
And so now I'm like feel obligated to like continue this, and I'm just like, I know it's not going to go anywhere, but I feel obligated to do it,
Yeah.
Which is kind of a stupid attitude, but that's kind of how I play games.
Well, my son would struggle with. First of all, I would hope my son would not play this game right now, but for other reasons. But he's like you, man. He's a complete like years ago when he was a little kid, and we still had it was like the Nintendo DS.
Yeah.
Or not the Nintendo DS. What was the one that was like a square flip screen?
Yeah, that was the DS.
Was that the DS? Yeah, okay. Yeah, it had the Nintendo DS, and we got him Lego Batman on it. That dude got 100% of that game. I mean, every character unlocked, every, little pip or whatever you could get. I remember one day I said, Dad, I finished the game. I said, okay, what are you talking about? And then he gave it to me, was like, oh my gosh, you actually did.
You literally finished the game.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna keep playing it. The story is interesting. The main story, it's interesting. I enjoy it. The characters are kind of cool. I think that the main story is probably its strongest part of it. It's kind of interesting. Like, there's Keanu Reeves has a character that's in it, and he's kind of evolving as I'm going along, so that's good too. But it's just all the side stuff just feels, it feels more like Dragon Age Inquisition. Did you ever play that?
Yeah, I tried.
Yeah, where you're just like, dude, I just am doing the same thing over and over again, and like, what does it really matter other than to level up my character?
Yeah.
So it's interesting though. I mean, like, it's an interesting world and concept and stuff that's going on, but really what it's doing is it's giving me insight as I go to read the Cyberpunk Red RPG book. So I'll have a flavor of context.
You're doing
of the
research.
world. Yes, I am. Exactly. But I've leveled up my guy to the point where it's I roll up onto one of these things that happens, and I'm like an offensive net runner essentially. I build out my guy, so he can hack everybody, and what I do is short circuit their BioWare that they have in them. And I just roll in and I'm like, dead. Okay, that's done. Because I'm just hack. And I've built him to where he can hack really fast and do really potent stuff. But
have you watched the Netflix series yet?
No, I didn't know there was a Netflix.
Yeah, there's
series.
a Cyberpunk Netflix series. It's an anime style.
Yeah, okay.
I'll say this: it is not kid friendly.
Oh dear. Okay.
As you would expect.
Yeah, fair enough.
But so be careful because my kids are a lot are on an anime kick.
Yeah.
So they're flipping through Netflix, popping new animes. This one looks like a normal one, but it is absolutely mature. I mean, there's nudity and mature content.
It's like what was it? Castlevania Season 3.
Yeah, although yes. But that's too bad because, that was just little things here and there because the Castlevania was an amazing series.
It was great.
It was so great. Even my wife loved it.
Yeah.
But this one, right out the door, it's not pretending to be anything else.
Interesting. Okay.
But anyways, so if you're looking, you're a mature man. So if you're looking for more information to help.
I am an adult male. Mature is another story.
Yeah. Well, if you're looking for more information to give you some background and be, maybe that's another way.
That's true. Fair enough. Okay, cool. The other thing is that I ended up getting my new resin 3D printer set up and running this weekend.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's pretty good. I ended up printed a Riolu Pokemon for my daughter.
Yep.
And that was the first real print after the calibration prints that I did. So I got the resin dialed in and the bed level. By the way, leveling the bed on this is like child's play.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Compared to that Asus that we had.
Yeah.
Or not Asus, the Ace. Yeah, it was Asus, right? No, that's a computer.
It was a Prusa 3 knockoff.
Yeah.
Whatever it was.
So, anyway, but my bed had warped, so trying to level that thing was a nightmare. But this one, I'm just the friend that I bought. I know, my friend that, he's like, so this is how you have to kind of just level it, and, and I'm like, okay, that's it. He's like, yeah, but you gotta, make sure there's resistance. I'm like, resistance? Psh, brother, please.
Yeah.
I was like, I was there when the deep magic was born. Do not cite it to me.
Yeah. Well, but then you only have to level it once every way not that often.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Jim, our buddy Jim gave me his.
Did he?
Yeah, he came over actually the same weekend too. He came over and installed it in my house, and so I've been printing some things here and there too. It is just so much more hands off than the FDMs were.
Yeah, I mean, you have to do the post-processing of the prints, but honestly, it's not that big of a deal.
It's not that big a deal, yeah. There is a lot more smell, I'll say that.
Yeah, I'm going to move mine to a different room just to keep it, because it was stinking up the entire basement.
Yep, same. Mine's in a back room, but I can vaguely smell it when I enter my basement, so I'm like, I'm going to figure this out.
I ended up getting a Cure wash station.
Oh, you bought from who?
Just got it from Amazon. It's a Anycubic.
Yep.
The Anycubic one.
The Anycubic ones? Yeah, cool.
So it was really, really good. Like, you just like washed it, moved it over, put it on the cure thing, did it, and like
So which one do you have? Which printer do you have?
I have the Mono S.
Oh, the Mono S. Okay, cool. Yeah, I've
Is
got
that what it's called? The Anycubic Mono S, I think. Photon S.
Photon S, not Mono S. Yeah, Photon. Yeah, 'cause with the Photon... Yeah, so Jim, our buddy Jim, gave me his, and his was one of the originals. So it is the Anycubic Photon Classic.
Oh, wow.
So it has the multicolor LCD. Which actually, interestingly, there is a Halloween sale at Anycubic right now. You can get their Anycubic Mono 4K for $189.
It's a good deal, man.
It's a really good deal considering, what was it like 4 years ago? Resin printers were like 500 plus.
Oh, easily. They're like 800 to 1,000 depending.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I love how smooth everything comes out. It's really nice.
Yeah, it's great. Have you had any failed prints yet?
Other than so it's funny. The first Riolu that I did, like its leg just was missing.
Oh. That's
like
weird.
It was super random. Like I think the support that was supposed to go where the leg was didn't get quite finished, like that one support, and so like it just didn't end up printing the rest of his leg.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I've had a failed print. I had some really good prints right off the bat, and then I decided I was going to try to make a big one, and I tried to lay it out to where I thought the supports would be good, but I didn't do it right, and it didn't suction off of the FEP.
Are you using? Oh yeah. Are you using? What slicer are you using?
I'm using. I'll tell you right now. It's Chidu Box to do the hollowing, the holing, and the supports, and then I use Anycubic's Photon Workshop to convert to the photon format. Because this printer uses the older photon format.
Oh, gotcha. I use Lychee, the Lychee slicer. And the nice thing about that, it's got like a support wizard, and I just hit it, and it's like, here's your supports. And so far,
yeah, I think all of these have. I think all of them have support, can do the ports themselves, and at least all the ones I've looked at. I haven't seen that as like a differentiator in the slicers right now.
Yeah.
But it didn't used to be that way.
No, I mean even with our FDM printers, like you had to be like, okay, I'm going to put a support here and pray.
Yeah, it's evolved quite a bit. The industry, it's cool to see.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, I'm excited about it. What I would like to do, and I think I had talked about this, is doing some contests where we 3D print some stuff and being able to send it out to our people that listen.
Well, I want to. My goal is to print busts, and I want to work on skin tones.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm gonna print like I don't know, like 15 busts, and then just experiment without having to really care if I screw up or not.
Yep, that's good. We need to get
when I say busts, I mean okay.
Yeah, some of them are busts.
Be careful when you Google for busts.
Yeah, right.
Right.
We need to get Devin Maher down here and do a painting class because he changed the entire outlook of how I'm painting, and I was painting some Kill Team Orcs over the weekend too, and I really like how their skin's coming out. I'm gonna do a little bit more to pull out the highlights just a bit more. But already they look striking compared to some of the other stuff that I've done before.
Yeah, we should totally.
So yeah, very good stuff. But Jason, with Halloween around the corner, have you thought about what to get your friends for Halloween?
Well, if your friends like to play games that include little cubic thingies that you roll on the table to help you determine outcomes.
Yes.
I think we might have just the thing for you.
And we're not talking about Starbursts or Mambas, ladies and gentlemen, because this is no treat. Well, it could be a treat.
You know what's funny? I wonder if you could use Starburst for D2.
Actually, that'd be kind of hilarious.
It would,
wrapper side up, like the seam side up.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. But yeah, this is no trick but a treat, everybody. Baron of Dice is offering a discount on all of his dice. Right now, if you use promo code Tabletop and Beyond, you get a discount. The show gets a kickback. It's a win-win for everybody. It helps us keep quality content coming to you, and you get quality resin dice that is hand-swirled quality stuff. Good-looking
stuff. Go check them out at baronofdice.com. Remember to leave off the www. And look at all the cool stuff he's made.
Very good. And use promo code again, Tabletop and Beyond.
Tabletop and Beyond. Thanks, guys.
Yep. Thank you. All right, Jason, let's talk about some geek news. I was telling you today that if you love gaming and love reading, which a lot of people do, the creator of Settlers of Catan is coming out with a trilogy novel. His first book, which is about 576 pages, is called Catan ein Roman, which in German means a novel. It takes place in Norway in the year 860. Half-brothers Thorolf, Yngvi, and Digger help the daughters of the Viking prince Haldor to escape. Haldor's revenge is not long in coming. He roams through the territory of the liberators, pillaging and banishing them. The brothers have no choice. With settlers who are willing to emigrate, they set out for new shores and after an adventurous sea voyage, reach Catan, the land of the sun. But the island presents the brothers with enormous challenges. Will they stand together to offer the settlers a brighter future, or will this task divide them? And the real question is, what is the sheep to wood economy?
Right.
I wonder if half the plot of this book is going to be about, like, I'm going to trade you 3 bricks for 2 sheep.
Yeah, I don't know, that paragraph you just read seems like it could be a setup for a really, an intriguing challenge. And then what if it really turns out to be like it's all about trade and economics and.
I would love it if, like, they settle, and then the next novel, like the second book, is like about their children, and they're like, "Watch out! Horloff is building the longest road."
Yeah. And then there's a thief, right?
There's a thief and a soldier.
Yep, and a soldier.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So interesting. I mean, it sounds like it's gonna be a fantasy novel. I wouldn't have picked Catan to be like a fantasy setting because it's such an economic game. You know what I mean? Like,
I think there's probably a fan base out there that this is for.
Yeah. Which it prints, I think, in just the next couple weeks, but only in German at this point. So if you speak German, you'll like it. I'm sure it'll probably get translated to English at some point, but realize that it's out there.
There you go.
It's out there. Item number 2, Assassin's Creed is getting its own tabletop board game. So if you are a fan of sneaking around and doing your thing, you can go check out Assassin's Creed, the board game. It is coming out from Cool Minis or Not, so you know that there's going to be some legit miniatures in here. And actually, I almost want to get the game just to paint up some pretty sweet assassins. Now, I think that there's a chunk of stuff where you're playing in the modern day and historical eras. So like you played some of the Assassin's Creed games, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The worst part of those games were in the modern day, where you're like wandering around the Abstergo labs, and you're like, dude, why am I doing office work in this game? You know what I mean? Like, why am I running around different cubes looking at Post-it notes? Mm-hmm. Like, it was kind of like, okay. So, but apparently that's part of the board game. I imagine that, there's like pop in, pop out type of stuff that happens. But,
So I'm struggling to understand CMOS playing this. Is this a board game or a role-playing game?
It is. Well, that's a great question. Okay, so here's what this says. This is part of the announcement. Overseen by CMON's head of IP and RPGs, Francesco Nepatello, who helped do the One Ring RPG, Zombicide Chronicles RPG, Dune War for Arrakis. Players in Assassin's Creed role-playing game will create and play as descendants, modern-day characters whose ancestors were famous Brotherhood assassins of old. Players will also create and play as several of those same ancestors, one for each time period. They'll visit in their missions by entering the Animi network. Guiding their adventures is the Animus operator, who is the DM, I assume. It's their duty to set the scene and guide the players through the game. So it sounds like, you remember how Dan had his like time travelers board game that he made, right? Benjamin Franklin Time Travelers. It sounds like this is kind of that, where you're like in modern day, you're like part of the Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, where you're kind of like jacking into like the Animus network, and you're solving puzzles and riddles, but you're going back to different time periods. So like one adventure could be you playing, or like, 2 or 3 adventures or something like that. You could be playing in Jerusalem. Another one you could be playing in Moscow, like during, the end of World War One. Another one you could be playing like during, World War Two, French occupied or Nazi occupied France. You know what I mean? Like you could jump around to a lot of different time frames and play some of these different ancestors and just kind of go that way. So it sounds like, it's an RPG, and I think Dune War for Arrakis won like the best game at the Ennies last year. So the dude who's over this, I think, is got some experience with it.
Yeah, I think reading more on Simon's site, it looks like they're going to have deluxe books and then game supplements like maps and figures and that kind of stuff. So it sounds like it's actually going to be an RPG that just has a bunch of off-the-shelf stuff you can get to maybe do not have to play in Theater of the Mind.
Yeah, and like Simon's perfectly poised for that, right? Where you can get like the Templar pack or something like that of like miniatures, like for Middle Eastern stuff, or they might have like a Russia pack, or like they might have a, you know what I'm saying? Like, they can have different things, and I bet that those will correspond with different book supplements. So
yeah,
like,
that could be cool.
So like, for example, there might be a ancient China like book. Then so it'll have like different weapons. It'll have different. I'm just speculating here, but I can easily see that happen. So there's a wealth of content because you have the entire world's history to draw from. There could be a Rome book, there could be an ancient Greece book, there could be a Persia book, there could be, just so much stuff. As a GM, how do you feel about that?
I don't care. I think that it can be good for some groups. The Free League Publishing likes to give a lot of maps and even decks of cards that help players connect their imagination to the story that's happening.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that. You know that I prefer Theater of the Mind, but I like maps. What I don't like is I don't like tiles. I don't like, I don't like the restrictions on mechanical movement of you can move 30 squares and then you have a range of 2 squares, and I don't like that stuff. It feels too board gamey to me.
I gotcha.
But I don't mind stuff you can put on the table to help connect your imagination to the story.
So here's my concern, and it has nothing to do with like the miniatures or anything like that. My concern is that, like, as a GM, I'm going to need to become an expert in ancient Rome.
Oh,
I need to become an expert in ancient Persia. I'm going to need to become an expert in like World War II France. I'm going to need to, you know what I mean? Like,
I don't think you'll have to. I think that I bet that the books will give you enough background information.
Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah. But that would suck if you had a group that had that level of expectation.
Yeah.
I think you just have to set that up front. I'm not an expert in ancient Rome.
Yes.
My knowledge is what the book has told me.
Unless you are. Maybe you're an ultra expert and then you like go too deep. Like you're
maybe.
The other.
Yeah.
Like they're like, stop. We just don't want to be in the caste slave system.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So anyway, I'll be interested to see pre-orders go out in early 2023. It says. So we'll keep our eye on that one. Elden Ring, the board game, it was announced back in September that this was coming out, but I did see that it jumped up onto Kickstarter right now. It's just a placeholder at this point. It's coming November 22nd, 2022. It is being put out by Steamforged Games Limited, which is the same company that did Dark Souls, the board game. Jason, given what you know about Dark Souls and about the Elden Ring, how do you think that the gameplay of this is going to differ, if at all, from Dark Souls? Or do you think it's going to be essentially the same style of play?
Well, Elden Ring and Dark Souls has very similar style of play.
Yes.
So I would expect that this board game is going to try to capture that same feeling in a different setting. What I would maybe see, Elden Ring is, the thing about the Souls series and even Elden Ring is they're very tied into an underlayer of deep lore that goes multi-layers down. You can play the game and not care at all about the lore. You can and totally play through the whole game, but you can also spend so much more time digging into those layers. So I think that what we'll see is a Dark Souls board game that maybe focuses more on campaign style, themed on the stories and the interactions of all of the characters in Elden Ring that are all tied together. That's what I'm anticipating.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I would be interested because the Dark Souls game, I really like it. You and I both like the Dark Souls game. It's a lot of fun. But it has the movement is kind of from point to point on there, I'd be interested.
You progress through it.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there's literally a grid of points on the boards.
You mean the board game? Dark Souls, the board game.
Yeah, the board. Yeah, the board game. So there's points where you when you move, you can move 2 up, or you know what I mean. You are kind of attached to a sort of a framework grid on there. I'd be interested to see if it becomes more like a skirmish game, where you have a ruler, and you can move minis any direction you want.
I don't think it will. I don't think that's the demographic they're shooting for.
Okay, and that's totally fine. Yeah. I'll be interested to see what this is like.
Yep.
So, but yeah, because there is a big demand for skirmish games out there right now. But those mechanics of moving, the way the movement worked and the way that the action order was, you had to be able to, in Dark Souls, the board game, the way you win is you exploited those action orders. You knew that it had to move towards somebody. You knew that it had to turn a certain way depending on the card that it drew. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it had an AI engine that was running it, and that AI had the restrictions of the grid of the board.
Yeah. Yeah, and you kind of did too. So you had to learn how to play and exploit against that, and that's how you won. And so that gave it the same feel as the Dark Souls, the video game, which is you had to learn how each enemy worked and exploit them against each other, basically, So anyway, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Let's see, Deep Madness. Why don't you kick us off with that one, Jason?
So Deep Madness is one that we have talked about. Well, probably a couple earlier in the show, but this is by I'm drawing a blank. Dimension Games, right? Small company. Back in 2016 they raised over $2.4 million, 10,000 backers to do the original Deep Madness, which is a game set as a horror game that combines kind of like BioShock with kind of a H.P. Lovecraft feeling down on the bottom of the ocean, a science station that has gone awry. And you and your team arrives down there hoping to do some fun research, find that the place is opened interdimensional connections to other realms, and horrors are pouring through and doing all sorts of crazy things, and you've got to basically just survive. It has a really interesting flooding mechanic where the board game tiles are flooding, and you have oxygen meters you can asphyxiate. You have a madness and a sanity, or you have a sanity and a health, just like Arkham Horror, or like a lot of those games do. And it has a really fun, fast mechanic when you get playing the game. I've played it actually recently with a couple of our board game nights, and we're trying to tackle through. It's also very scenario driven. So there's, the base expansion had lots of scenarios that told a specific story, and there's many expansions. Well, what's cool in the news here is that they are now back for their third reprint and edition of a new expansion called Deep Madness Reborn. And Madness Reborn actually has 7 fan-crafted scenarios. These are super fans that have been part of the community for so long that they've crafted their own scenarios, and the company has taken these and baked them into a box with a supplement book and new miniatures. And this is one of those companies that, Simon, I think, makes great minis. Dimensional Games minis are really, really mind-boggling and amazing as well. They do not spare an expense for their minis. And their minis are very big. I think one of their minis is like 150 millimeters tall, 130 millimeters
awesome.
tall.
Yeah.
Yeah, huge minis. And that's scaled to a standard 28 millimeter.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's standing like almost 5 times taller than that mini.
Yeah. So anyways, they're on a Kickstarter right now for their 3rd reprint. So if you didn't get in before, please do. This is the only way to get a hold of the Deep Madness games. They've only ever been through reprints on Kickstarter. And there's a new expansion. It's got about a week left to go, and they've raised about $275,000. Now I will say that their first one they raised $2.4 million, their second print $1.8 million, and this one has only raised $275,000. So I think the game's showing its age a little bit, to be honest, age in its community as well.
Yeah, I mean it's a reprint too, right? So it's like.
Yeah. Oh well, a reprint and a new expansion, and you can just buy the expansion.
Right. So I'd be curious to see how many of the expansions are going.
Right. Versus the full reprint, and they're trying to do things like you can buy an upgrade kit that will upgrade your original game with new cards that they've done. Like they've incorporated the facts into the cards and stuff like that. You can buy additional tokens and dice, but I am most likely just going to get the expansion, but we'll see. Here's the thing. They have already had 3, maybe actually they have had tons of expansions so far. 1, 2, 3, 4 giant box expansions and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mini expansions.
Wow.
They've had a ton of content for this game. So it's kind of like I've got a lot of stuff on my shelf that is still sitting in the plastic wrap.
Right.
So I'm like, I don't know yet if I'm going to go full in, but I wanted to make sure the announcement was there. If anybody wanted to get in, now's the time. And it might be, again, showing as it's decreasing, I think, in its support, it might be one of the last times to get a hold of this without aftermarket.
Yeah, interesting.
Yep.
Cool.
So that's that item.
Yeah, check it out. It's on Kickstarter right now.
Yep, on Kickstarter.
Very good. Very good. The last bit of news that we have is at Free League Publishing. Obviously, we have a big soft spot in our hearts for them. They announced that the One Ring, Ruins of the Lost Realm, will be released on October 25th, which is in about a week from this broadcast. And so this book further expands the RPG, as you'll have a chance to explore a few known areas of Middle-earth that have been spoken of and written about here and there, but contain whole new adventures for you to embark on as a group for your TTRPG party or as a GM to run as a game. The book is going for about $35, and you can pre-order it right now ahead of release on the Free League Publishing website. So go ahead and check that out. I know that I've got the One Ring starter set that we have yet to play, just mostly because of scheduling conflicts, but I am dying to get that going because we need to get some Hobbits running, especially with the end of the Rings of Power series that was on Amazon.
Yep.
So, have you watched any of that yet?
Nope.
Okay.
And I've already expressed why.
Yeah, I will say that the last episode plucked it from the fire from me and put it back into the pan. So I don't think it's not done cooking yet. But it was about to be burned to a crisp, but the last episode pulled it out.
I saw someone on one of my, Facebook circles, I don't know, posted and said something on the order of, I'm really happy with what happened here. The only suggestion I would be is to really, really slow the story down a little bit more so that we can really build into the individual character progression and the world building. Just slow it down a little bit more. Don't speed it up as much.
I hope they're saying that tongue in cheek.
I know. I saw that. I was like, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
I think it was tongue in cheek.
My daughter was like upset with this series until she really saw the last one, and then she's like, okay.
Yeah, but that sucks, man. Like, do you really have to? I mean, how many episodes?
8 episodes.
So you got to invest 7 hours.
Oh, they're not just an hour. Some of them are an hour 15.
Yeah, so you got to invest 10 hours to get to a single redeeming episode.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if that's good entertainment.
I think and so the question is will season 2 be like, now that like all the roots have been laid, like the people, the characters are in the places that they need to be. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but the characters are in the places that they need to be. And you know what's what. Now I think that you can start pushing forward on the story. Like, you don't have to be like, okay, who are all these people? You know.
So is this one of those where, like, fans took episode 1 and 2 of Star Wars and made a fan edited version that was 1 hour long, and the entire first episode was the first 5 minutes?
Yeah, like, probably.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it took a while to get where it needed to go, so.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. But then once it got there, you're like, okay, I can see where it's going. So the question is are they going to slow it down again, or are they going to, like, keep pushing forward, So we won't know for another year at least, I think.
Yep.
So anyway. All right, well, Jason, that's our geek news. We've done our geek week geek news. Let's talk about our main topic today. When this comes out, we are less than 2 weeks away from Halloween. And what better time than to either watch a totally freaky movie with your wife, who will be scared for the next week, or play a board game with your friends.
Yeah. Or your kids.
Or your kids.
Or your kids.
Yeah. So if you're not into the watching totally scary movies on Halloween or dealing with annoying trick-or-treaters, why not check out some of these great Halloween games that we have curated for you? Mm-hmm. So Jason and I have chosen 3 of our favorite Halloween games. We have a couple honorable mentions, and we'll go from there. So Jason, what is your first Halloween-themed game that you would love to play with your friends, family, and or kids?
Yeah, so my first one, which I have played with my kids before, is Ghost Stories, the board game. This game is I don't know how to. I'm not good at pronouncing things. You are, but anyways, it was made quite a while ago. I think 2008, 2009. It's an older game. It's a 4-player co-op game set in, I believe, somewhere in inland China, and it really has that theme. It has a very like Chinese lore theme. The ghosts that are in the card deck have that very that aesthetic to them. The board game or the tiles look like you're in that part of the world, but it's really cool. It's basically, the theme is there's this village somewhere just deep in, it doesn't really matter where, deep in mainland China, where you have 9 little village tiles in the center of the table, and approaching those tiles are 4 player boards that have ghosts that spawn and try to get into and haunt those village tiles. And the villagers are looking to you to rescue them. So you are 4 kind of monk-ish, I don't even really know what you are, some sort of magic monk users that start off in the middle of the village, and you basically just have to move around these 9 tiles to try to tackle these ghosts that are approaching the village from different angles. And the angle that each ghost comes in on and their turn changes every turn. So you're kind of having to work together to say, okay, well, you go to that corner of the village, I'll go to this corner, because this ghost if we don't take care of him, he's going to haunt this tile before I get there. And so it's very much like a tactical co-op game. It's also a very difficult game. I think it has, on Board Game Geek, it has somewhere on the order of a 40% or less win rate.
Ooh.
Yeah. There are various difficulty levels when you set the game up to play. I'll say I have never played on anything other than the easiest difficulty level. And then after we finish the game, when we have won, we usually realize it's because we forgot a rule. So we say it's the easy level that we played on.
Nice.
But look it up. It has it's very fun. It's very engaging. It's one of those games. Takes about an hour to play. Once you get it set up, I played it with my kids. And the cards, if you have kids that get scared with pictures, the cards can be a little scary. The ghosts can get a little scary in the pictures, but it's also very colorful. It has kind of a colorful atmosphere. But it's also very, like I said, it's a very hard game. It's very challenging. The whole time you're playing the game, even if it's not your turn, you're interacting and you're strategizing together. And it has some really good mechanics for scaling the difficulty up with the number of players.
Yeah.
So I recommend that as a go-to kind of family Halloween ghost story night board game.
Very good. Very good.
What about you?
So my first one that I want to talk about is Betrayal at House on the Hill.
At Haunted Hill. Yeah.
Actually, it's Betrayal at House on the
House
Hill.
on Hill. It's not Haunted Hill. We keep every time we see this, we mix it up with the Netflix television series.
I do every time. And so the reason I looked it up on Board Game Geek was just because of that reason, because I wrote it down wrong too.
Yeah.
So what I love about this game, if you haven't played this game, it's for 3 to 6 players. It's best if you've got 5 to 6 players. It takes about an hour to play. It starts out as kind of a co-op game, where you're just sort of exploring what's around you. You're in this haunted house. You can go up to the 3rd level. You can be on the main level. You can be down in the catacombs. Or I guess not catacombs, it's the basement. There is a different version of this called Betrayal at Baldur's Gate. I actually like this version better. The Betrayal at Baldur's Gate's fun if you're a D&D nerd, because there's all of the D&D spells, and you've got like Vecna's hand and all that stuff that's in there. Which is a lot of fun. But in terms of a Halloween game, this is a much better one. This is actually like a haunted house that you're going through. And the best part of this is, for those that have no idea what this is, you play this until you end up spawning a haunting. And when the haunting happens, whoever ends up spawning it usually ends up cursed somehow. And they become the villain. And they have a mission that they have to do. And then the players have a mission that they have to do. So, like, the haunted person, maybe their job is to end up, dropping certain items in the house to summon a deadly portal. So they know that they have to get to, like, certain rooms in the house and leave a token there, right? And then the players have to maybe do the same, but in their things, and you can like kind of flip tokens, and so it becomes adversarial at that moment. Every time I've played this, even with people who aren't really good at board games, we always have a good time. And the thing that I worried about this game in the beginning was, the person who ends up spawning the haunting, they're going to feel like the odd one out. They're going to feel like, why'd this happen to me? Or, but I've never seen that happen. They always, like, everybody who, like, becomes the bad guy is kind of like, oh, this is crazy. Okay, I've got a mission to do. And, so.
Yeah. I've seen it happen once. Where
really?
Just the way the setup was, the person who became the haunting became a vampire, I think.
Okay.
But unfortunately, it happened to them when they were in the basement.
Oh.
And the way that the board had evolved, there was no way to get out of the basement except to climb something. Like, there was no stairwell into the basement. It was a hole you had to climb up. And their character specifically said they could not climb.
Oh,
and so they were trapped in the basement, and they could not get out of the basement. So everyone else just ran around collecting items, getting beefed up, and then they just stood at the edge of the basement and fired in.
Yeah, that would be a negative play experience for sure.
But that's a one-off, just odd way that it ended up. And
it seems like
scenario
driven. Like, it probably wasn't like that the player felt bad initially about being chosen to be the haunted one.
Yeah,
right?
that's a good point. Yeah, but it just kind of like goofed up on them. But
As they started like taking account of the situation, they're like, oh, this really sucks.
Oh, wait a minute, I can't do anything.
Yeah, but I think it's a lot of fun. It's super easy to play. It's got kind of this. You've got different stats with your characters: sanity, might, speed, intelligence, and like you can be getting knocked down in like each of those different areas, and then die. Your characters can actually die in this, so it's a lot of fun. Again, it's like co-op in the beginning, but then it becomes adversarial at a certain point. And we have the Betrayal at Baldur's Gate, just as an FYI. We do have the Baldur's Gate one. I got that one because my kids were kind of into D&D, and they really like this game. They think this game's a lot of fun.
I think I like I think I like the house one better.
I do too.
Because I like it contained inside of a haunted mansion kind of a thing.
Yeah, I do too. It Baldur's Gate like spills out onto the streets, and so I think that the mansion one, and it's to me, it's a little bit more thematic, right? You got like people wandering around with flashlights, and you're like, don't go into the basement, but then you go into the basement. So
I always got to go into the basement.
So this one's publishers Avalon Hill and Wizards of the Coast. So yeah, I mean, you can find this game anywhere, and it's really not that expensive either.
You can get in Target, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a lot of fun. One of my favorites.
Yep,
All right, what's your second one?
My second one is Escape the Dark Sector. This is a 2020 game, now by Themeborn. Now, we actually have a YouTube video of an unboxing and how to play this. So please go check out our YouTube channel, Tabletop and Beyond, and look for Escape the Dark Sector.
You'll find it in the game reviews playlist.
Yep, game reviews playlist. So, but this is a great one for me. I love this game. It's super themed. It's super story feeling. It's got fun mechanics, quick to play. You are basically, you start the game, you pick up your crew, and the game starts with you turning over a chapter card that says you have broken out of prison down in the belly of the Dark Sector. And the Dark Sector is a station on the dark side of a planetary moon. It's a very kind of adventure-ish game where you turn over chapter cards, you read the chapter flavor text, and then there's a challenge. And you have to, as a team, decide how to tackle the challenge. You tackle the challenge by rolling your dice. And a lot of times those challenges will result in having to do combat. And you can do ranged combat, you can do melee combat, you can get items, bigger guns, as you're progressing through the sector and flipping over those chapter cards. It's quick to set up. It's quick to tear down. It's fun to play. It has an amazing art aesthetic, kind of a black and white, hand-drawn. Everything is hand-drawn. Kind of a probably somewhere between 60s to 70s artistic style.
You know what it reminds me of is, do you remember that book, Scary Stories in the Dark?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's
I could see that a little.
It's like a sci-fi version of that.
Yeah, I could see that.
You
now
know,
there is a
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, whereas like Scary Stories in the Dark was like, just kind of like not fantasy, but just kind of normal.
Yeah, just
weird
supernatural
things,
stuff in our normal world.
Yeah, but it was all black and white, kind of like hand-drawn type stuff.
Yeah. If you're not into sci-fi, there is another version that came before this one called Escape the Dark Castle. Mm-hmm. We got to play the Escape the Dark Castle this last Gen Con. We've always been Dark Sector fans. Dark Castle plays a lot like the Dark Sector, except I think it's actually a little bit simpler than Dark Sector. It came first, and when they then created Dark Sector to produce their sci-fi setting, they added a little bit more mechanics to make it a little bit maybe more interesting. But I think both games are fun. They do have a little bit of a horror feel. It is a dungeon crawl, and the dungeon changes every time you play because you shuffle those chapter cards around.
Yeah.
And so I like to think that it's kind of a dark. When I'm playing it, it's a dark, sinister sci-fi where you can come across, mutants that are trying to kill you. You can also come across bounty hunters. You can come across friendly people who sell you things. And then there's always a boss store at the end with some crazy mutated thing that you have to kill to finally get to your ship and escape the Dark Sector. So, fun game. Check out our video.
Now, definitely check out our video. Now, you have played this with your kids, I believe, right?
Oh, yeah. Because my kids love rolling dice, right?
Yeah.
And so flip the card, and one of my kids will read it and we'll play. The other kid will be like, what do I do now? I just want to roll the dice, So
Right, exactly.
It's easy to play. And it has a real fun health tracker that's kind of like an EKG machine as you're kind of ticking your health up and down. And so the kids love to kind of draw on that. It's a fun game.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so my next game that I have is Werewolf, the card game. Right, so this is a social deduction game. It's a great party game. I think you can play it with up to like 36 people. And you got some people who are werewolves and some people who are townsfolk, and the idea is like root out the werewolves. So, I mean, Halloween's great because you usually have Halloween parties. Some of your older kids may not go trick-or-treating. They may just kind of hang around and either watch a scary movie or not, or play some games. Well, Werewolf should be on the list of those kids playing it because it's a great game for a large group of kids, and adults too, if you're having an adult party. Great game for a large group of people. Easy to pick up, easy to do, very interactive, of course, since it's a social deduction game. And, the theme is that werewolves. I mean, like, who doesn't love werewolves on Halloween, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
it's a fun. I like this version with the cards because it puts a little bit of structure to it to help those big social groups kind of be able to grasp the rules and play quickly.
Yeah.
Because we played. I don't know about you, but we played Werewolf before anyone had any. It was just, someone remembered how to play, and then you'd all get together and sit around in chairs in a room and just play the game. Kind of like Mafia, right?
Yeah, Mafia, Murder in the Dark, or whatever, So the nice thing is, this is Werewolf, a party game for devious people. You can get it on Amazon right now for $13. Right? So great to have in your just on deck if you got a large group of people playing. And, again, you don't have to play this at Halloween, but if you've got a Halloween party going on and people are kind of staring at their shoes, like, why not pull it out?
Right.
So, and there's interesting ones because it's got 20 villager cards, 10 werewolf cards, 8 wild cards, 2 seer cards, 2 doctor cards, 2 moderator cards, 2 village drunk cards, 2 witch cards, 2 alpha werewolf cards. I don't know if I've played this version per se, but it sounds fun. Sounds like the different roles.
We played it at our board game nights a few times.
Yeah.
So it's worth doing. You got to be most people can get together and play social deduction games. Some people get frustrated with them, but that's just the way it is.
And some people you'll lose their trust forever. So I don't know if I don't know if I told you this, but my wife came home and she was your wife and my wife had gone to the beach together, right, this last week.
Yeah.
And my wife came home and she said that they were playing games, and your wife looked at my wife and says, "I will never trust your husband again."
Yep.
And my wife's like, "Oh, I'm there with you, sister."
Nice.
Yeah, well, I said, here's the thing. This is how it's going to go. This is the cycle. They won't trust me until they lose a couple of games because they didn't trust me.
Yeah.
Right? And then they'll be like, gosh dang it. And then they'll get to a point where they're going to be like, well, I got to trust him because I've lost games. And then that's when the betrayal happens again.
Yeah.
So
I always struggle with these games because I have a hard time adjusting my persona to try to convince people one way or the other. Like I try to play these games and say, I'm just going to really pretend to be who I really am, and people, because they're playing a social deduction game, they think that I'm lying, and so I'm usually the kind of guy that gets killed when I shouldn't be killed, and I'm like,
Right.
I told you, like, well, you looked like this. I was like, I looked like the way that I am. You just thought, and I don't mean like the way that my card is.
Yeah.
You just thought I was trying to trick you. It's like, well, you behaved like you were trying. I don't know how to do this. Because the problem is that we have some people when we play these games that are really good at those games, and the problem is if those people come to the table to play, then everyone doesn't trust anyone because they know those people are playing.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what makes these games fun.
Yeah, exactly. So,
all right, cool.
Yeah, so that's my second one. Werewolf the Party Game, a game for devious people.
Yep.
Be devious.
Nice. Yeah. So my third one was one that we talked about earlier in the news. Is Deep Madness. I love this game. I'll tell you this: it is a beast to set up.
There's a lot of components.
Oh my gosh, it takes probably. I feel like I try to get faster every time, but it really takes about 30 minutes to set this game up. Because you set it up differently for every scenario with the tiles and the boards. But what's great about this game is, like I said, it's a dungeon crawler on the bottom of the ocean, and you're in this station which had some sort of connection to an interdimensional, probably portal to hell of some form. It's a very nightmarish game, so your characters are losing sanity. It's a horde game. The board becomes overrun very quickly. The goal is not to kill monsters. The goal is to outrun the monsters while you're trying to do the objectives and finding them only when you have to. But it has this really cool. Yep. It has two really cool mechanics. One is which I mentioned before, which is the flooding. Because you're underwater, certain boards are flooded boards, and when you're in those rooms, to take actions in those rooms, you have to tick down an oxygen dial. And as you tick that dial down, it can move you closer and closer to death. And that's kind of a cool mechanic because it makes you like really play the action. What's it called? What do we call it? Action. Economics to really say, what can I really? I know I want to move and then shoot and then pick up the item. What can I really do with the oxygen I left? Maybe I really can only move and pick up the item because I'll start asphyxiating. But the other really cool mechanic is it has a really strong AI system that randomly what it calls devours a tile. And when you devour a tile, you flip it over. And when you flip it over, it looks exactly like the tile that it was, except now it's like a deep red tint. And then it has monster spawns on it, and it spawns monsters from that tile now. So as you play through the game, a chapter scenario, there's kind of a race to finish the scenario because the boards are all starting to become devoured and the monster spawns are growing and more monsters are coming onto the board. And typically every time we play this game, when we get to the end, the board is just overrun with monsters.
Yeah, yes.
And if we win by like one final action, and we would have lost if we didn't get it.
Yep. That was my impression playing it. It was like by the skin of our teeth.
By the skin of your teeth. And it's really, like I said, it's a really fun AI. It moves the monsters for you. The monsters all are different. They have their own things they do on their turn. The initiative order is interesting. The monsters go in between each player. So you have a general idea of what's coming next, but there's always a little things could go wrong and more things could come, more monsters could come. So it gets to be very horrifying very quickly. So I think it's a good Halloween play.
Yeah, definitely. You get that kind of cosmic horror happen.
Yeah, cosmic.
Right?
Yep.
Which brings me to my last game, which is Arkham Horror. We kind of have talked about this throughout the show as well. Arkham Horror is a great game. A lot of components. The setup time isn't easy. But I played this, I think, one time with you guys. I think, was it our buddy Dan Flinton that had this game?
Me. I have it.
You have it. Yep. Okay. So played it with you guys at GuildCon, I think, one time. And then I also played it at Gen Con another time, which was a lot of fun. Now, the lady that I played it with at Gen Con, she kind of had some house rules to speed it up because we only had 3 hours, I think, for the game, so we needed to kind of get it going, which was fine, and the house rule, it made it a lot of fun. But this is a great game. I mean, it's a H.P. Lovecraft Call of Cthulhu game. You've got cultists that are running around. You got horror things that are happening to you. Your character is slowly descending into madness, or you're trying to keep up spirits while you're also investigating different areas. It's got a very, very distinct H.P. Lovecraft investigator role. I think that it's definitely its strongest part of the game. That it's very thematic in that sense.
It's very thematic, and its focus is to be true to the Cthulhu mythos. And it is extremely true to the Cthulhu mythos, so much so that you can get sucked into the various, voids and different dimensions that are referenced. and the various monsters and elder gods all exist, and they'll show their face. It's really, if you love H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos, this is the game to play to experience that. And this is an old game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's
yeah, it's been around for a while. I mean, Fantasy Flight Games put this out. Gosh,
well, I don't think they were the first version either.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe we'd have to look it up real quick here, but
yeah.
There's so many expansions too. I mean, it's ridiculous how many you can't fit it on a dining room table. Like how many expansions you got to put tables next to your table to be able to fill. And that's one of the gripes I have with the game is I played this thing to death. I love the game. It's very story driven. But it's another one of those games that is a beast to set up because there's like 5 different decks of cards. They're all different. Actually, there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think there's like 10 different decks of cards.
Yeah.
Like, you know, a monster bag, a grab bag where you put all the monster chips into one bag. You know, there's the investigator tokens, there's the clue tokens. There's just so much stuff to set the game up to get going. Yeah,
this came out in 2005.
2005.
So we're coming up on 20 years, buddy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's a long time, and I think it still holds its weight. It's got a 7.2 rating on Board Game Geek, which I think is great for a game as old as it is, right? And it says that, you know, it's for 1 to 6 players, but it plays best at 4, and I agree with that. I think 4 is good because 6 is going to take a long time, just because of all the stuff that happens in a game.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, we do a house rule when we play it, where in certain phases you do simultaneous play, because otherwise it can take. It's like it doesn't really. Certain phases where you're fighting monsters make sense. The movement phases is where the fighting monsters phase. But there's other phases where you're just drawing cards and reading story elements. Like everyone just gets their card, everybody reads their card.
Yeah.
And you kind of progress. Otherwise, it takes a really long time to play.
Yep, that's true. But I think it's great that, you know, anything H.P. Lovecraft has a strong Halloween feel for it. You know, he's got that New England kind of mysterious supernatural element about it. And I think every time that it gets to be fall time, I don't know why, but I want to start reading like an H.P. Lovecraft story, you know, just because I kind of get that sort of New England, you know, supernatural feel that I'm just like, okay, it's time to start reading H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah. So evidently this was a remake of a 1987 board game called Arkham Horror.
Oh, interesting.
Yep.
Wow, so it's been around even longer.
Yeah, for sure.
And here's the thing, it's I think you hit the nail on the head. You said this really stays true to the Call of Cthulhu mythos, you know, the H.P. Lovecraft mythos. There's a lot of Cthulhu games out there. There's a ton of Cthulhu games out there. And I would say a lot of them are just board games with the Cthulhu skin on it. And they're kind of like, okay, that's fine. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay, but it doesn't really, like, give you that lore, that feel, that immersion that maybe this game does.
Yeah.
So it's great. All right, so that's like my top 3 right there. Do you have any honorable mentions, Jason?
I do have an honorable mention. This is one for your kids on Halloween, right? So Halloween's you can have the scary fun aspect or the scary, fearful, fright night aspect, but you can also have the fun with little kids. And so there's one that we recently played called Castle Party. Okay. Which is a flip and right pumpkin king ball party. So flip and right, we've talked about roll and rights before. Yep. Flip and right, which actually there's a new zombie side game out. Flip and right game out. What it is you know, you draw cards, and based off of the cards that you've drawn, that you pull from let's use the words right so we don't confuse. Pull cards from a deck, and based off of those cards, you draw pictures or shapes usually shapes or check off boxes on a card in front of you. And the goal is to do something with the card in front of you, whether it's to ultimately achieve a certain shape that you've drawn onto the pad in front of you, or to mark off certain boxes to gain resources, and so on and so forth. But that's the mechanics. You're not rolling a dice. You're drawing cards and then using a pen and actually drawing it, usually a dry erase marker, onto a dry erase board. So this game is a fun little game where everyone has a board in front of them that is a castle. It is the Pumpkin King's castle.
Oh.
And all of the monsters in the realm, and these are all the monsters you would think of, like Frankenstein, Dracula, the Mummy, like all of these zombies, all these kind of classic ones that kids will recognize but not have to really have too much knowledge about.
Yeah.
They're all trying to come to the Pumpkin King's ball, and your goal is to try to fit them all into the castle so that he can have the most outrageous party this Halloween night, right? But the funny thing is that when you draw a card, it's like a Tetris shape. So you have to kind of formulate, you have to take this Tetris shape and try to draw it into your castle to get as many in your castle as possible, and try to group them by their monster type, because the monsters like to stick together. So you end up getting these
sense.
Yeah, you end up getting these kids that, like, you can't ever fit it perfectly in because it's a weird Tetris shape, so you have to draw some of the monsters into the moat, and those count against you at the end of the game, or some of them onto the drawbridge.
Yeah. They
They can't make it into the castle, so they don't get points. And at the end of the game, you just look at your board and you count up how many monsters did I get in, and then how many of them were grouped together properly, and that's kind of it. And it's a really simple game to do scoring. It's a simple game to play. And it's got a little bit of a fun Halloweenish feel for probably kids of a younger generation. If you're looking for an intense game, I would not say anyone probably, 13 years or older might get bored of this game really quick, but you can also play the game in about 20 minutes.
Nice. Oh, very good. Very good. My honorable mention is one we've talked about a couple of times on the podcast. It's Zombicide. Back in 2000.
It's a great one.
Yeah, man, what was it? 2008, 2009, I think. My wife and I had a Halloween. It had to have been 2009, 2010, actually. We had a Halloween, and I sat down and I said, let's watch something kind of freaky. And we turned on The Walking Dead.
The original?
The original one, yeah.
Was it the Technicolor version or the black and white?
Oh, no. It was The Walking Dead, the show on AMC.
Oh, not the original.
Not a Living Dead.
Not a Living Dead, okay.
No, it was The Walking Dead. And so, I mean, obviously, like, Halloween and zombies go like peanut butter and jelly, So what a great time to be a group of survivors, just like in The Walking Dead, where you're trying to survive in a town where there's just hordes of zombies and you're just trying to make it out alive. So, Zombicide's a great game, super fun co-op game, and there's a lot of value in that game. I think you can get it for like $50, the base game. Tons of expansions that you can get. And then, again, we talked about before on a previous show that Cool Minis or not, they put out weekly scenarios that you can play. So, a lot of fun there. So that's and you can play this with teens. I think at the Castle Party Flippin' Right Pumpkin King Ball is maybe a little too simple for your kids. Play Zombicide with them. I think
there
they'll
you
have a
go.
good time. Yeah.
Yep.
Are there any games, Jason, that you haven't tried that are Halloween themed that you would like to?
I think one that we mentioned that we looked at briefly when we were kind of setting the show up was Mansions of Madness.
Yep.
Mansion of Madness.
Another Cthulhu game, right?
Another Cthulhu game. Yeah, I love Cthulhu games, and I love Cthulhu game. Well, I'll say this: I love Lovecrafty games that have simplified the mechanics from the Arkham horror to reduce playtime.
Yeah.
But I think Mansions of Madness kind of has that feel of kind of a mansion that you can set up and you can kind of dungeon crawl inside it a little bit as it plays. I don't know much about the game beyond that the aesthetic looks fun and the game mechanics look familiar enough to where I feel like it could be fun to sit down and give it a go.
So the interesting thing about Mansions of Madness is it's one of those games that has an AI app.
Oh,
that
app.
Helps you, that kind of helps you do that, right? So I think that, again, we haven't tried this game, but it did win Best Co-op Game in 2016. And it was a Best Game Reprint. of 2016 as well. So there's that. I think that I think it's very similar to like the new AI assisted Descent or the Journeys of the Middle Earth from Fantasy Flight Games as well, where you kind of explore different things and then you hit you hit a spot on the map that corresponds to a spot on the digital map, and you hit on that and then things happen. So you can play it solo, you can play it with friends, and it's a kind of a co-op game. So it looks cool. I think I saw it retails for like about $89, $90 is where I saw it one time. It could be probably a little bit more, a little less than that, but that's about what it goes for. Which puts it in line again with the Journeys of Middle Earth and the Descent.
Yeah, a lot of those app-driven games.
Yeah, they're like kind of close around $100, right?
Yeah, I think that's what would make this. I think that's what's going to make this, maybe a little different than your standard, like, Castle Ravenloft or any of those others that group of tiles. You set the tiles down and you wander around those tiles for that playthrough. This one has the app, and I think we're seeing more app usage moving forward.
Yeah. Kind of give that augmented reality feel a little bit, right?
So this would be one that would be fun to jump back to see how did they employ this, back when app run games were really first just starting to come out.
Yeah. And so what would make this game great is if they got the dude who voiced the Darkest Dungeon.
Yeah, I know you were going there.
And was like the narrator for it. Mm-hmm. That'd be amazing.
Well, I tell you, that's what would have made the Darkest Dungeon game more amazing.
If they had an app.
If they had an app that had that guy's voice on it that played it.
Definitely would actually. Like, you're like, okay, you pulled this card, right? Now hit play. Yeah. And that'd be sweet.
That'd be pretty cool.
That'd be cool.
All
so, my honorable, the one that I haven't played that I'd be really interested in is the Horrified game, right? This is kind of a, I think when we were talking about this earlier, you described it as an Arkham Horror Light. But what it is there's like, monsters that have escaped that you're trying to kind of wrangle up and take care of. And that's like your Frankenstein, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Dracula, like all these kind of like 1950s scary movie monsters that are roaming around your town. They've come to life and you got to kind of go out and take care of them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So have you played this one though?
I have. I've played it, and I feel it is a fun game. It's a great Halloween game because like you said, Halloween you can take two approaches. You can take the Fright Night, or you can take the goofy, fun, scary stuff like Frankenstein and that stuff. Frankenstein. This one has that kind of a feel to it. You're running around trying to keep the monster. The monsters are trying to move to specific locations on the board, and your goal is to try to do what you can to thwart them from getting there. Like, it's funny, like and the monsters all have different objectives, and you draw the monsters randomly when you play. Like, so Frankenstein and his bride are trying to meet each other, so they start on opposite ends of the boards, and as the game progresses, they're moving slowly closer and closer to each other. And if they ever meet at each other, then basically then you're getting close to losing the game. So you spend your entire time trying to push them away from each other and trying to defeat them. So it's a fun, easy mechanic game. I mean, like, super easy. There's like two things you can do on your turn: move and do something, and that's it.
Yeah.
So
what you're
good
saying
for the
is
family.
If Frankenstein gets his booty call, it's over for all of us.
Yeah, a problem for all of us. Yeah.
Exactly. You're like, at this point we want to lose.
Yes.
Yeah. So I thought it looked fun. I thought it looked like a fun family game too.
It's easy to play. Well, so I think it's a good family game. It's only like $35 or something. Is that what you said? Or?
Nice.
Yeah, it's easy.
Yeah. Something cheap. And I think it's I think you can find it in like bigger stores too at this point.
Yeah, and there's been a reprint already. Looks like there was a reprint last year.
Okay.
In it that adds additional monsters like Bigfoot and other things like that. But
Oh yeah, there's like Universal Monsters, there's like American Monsters and stuff like that. I mean, the Universal Monster one, look on Amazon, it's got 4.5 stars, rated 5,688 times.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
And it's $35.
Yep.
So that's a great price to kind of play with your friends, play with your family, and very highly rated. So
yeah, jump into it.
Yeah, very good. So, yeah, listen, guys, hopefully you have a great Halloween planned. You have lots of friends, and, now that COVID's over, kids do their trick-or-treating, but maybe afterwards you can have your friends over and play some games, or over the weekend before, and jump into some of these kind of scary-themed, Halloween-themed games, and hopefully this podcast helped you decide which one you're going to play. So if you are going to play one, let us know on social media. Let us know what you think, because we'd love to hear what you're playing, and we'd love to see some of the games that you're up to. So, but until then, until the next time, keep the dice rolling, and we'll catch you later.
See ya.